sex is just a sexual activity, and sexual health is the health of the whole person involved in the activity.
Normal vaginal health look like when it comes to smell, discharge, color, or texture?
Let's not try to make our vagina smell like roses and oranges, because products will be sold like that.
One thing women over 30 should understand about her body.
Muscle mass, muscle mass, muscle mass.
Hi, and welcome back to season 2 of Her Way Unfiltered. And today we are talking about sexual health, not just sex, but hormones, pain, stress, body changes, and why so many of us feel disconnected from our own bodies. I am joined today by Dr. Sneha Roo, a physician and a therapist who works closely with women on sexual health, body awareness, trauma, and emotional well being. Let's start here. What do you think? Do you think sexual health is just about sex or is it much more?
Thank you so much for having me in, Shelly. Really appreciate it. And great first question, I must say. Um, Sexual health is not sex, very clearly. Sex, I would say, see, I'm a physician and a therapist, so biological and psychological perspective I bring. I would say sex is just a sexual activity, and sexual health is the health of the whole person involved in the activity. But sexual energy, if we talk about libido itself, which is very close to creative energy, I think that is pervasive. That is throughout our lives. We might not be actively engaging in the sexual activity per se, but how alive are we? How enthusiastic are we? How engaged are we with life? We all have had times where, we feel disconnected from life. We feel disconnected from our partner. So that is what the sexual energy I'm talking about. So I would say my work involves sexual energy, also sexual act being one part of it, and sexual health being one part of it. I feel that distinction we need to make, then we would benefit a lot.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I personally never thought in these different segments. But this brings me to my first question, that is, why do so many women feel so disconnected while growing up from their own bodies?
Yeah, yeah. I think it starts with the cultural context that we come from. Religion generally looks at sex as something that is really less than, malmutra ka bolte hain, that part of the body, the genital, both men and women. But women's genitals all the more. If you look at any particular thing, it is associated with sin, or the only allowed way to engage with the genitals has been for procreation. कि अगर आप सेक्स कर रहे हो to birth a child, then it is okay, then it is good sex, then it is pure sex. But otherwise, for pleasure sake or even to understand your own body, there's a lot of checks and balances put in place from the texts that are given and the concepts that religion places, but also in our everyday realities. अगर आप देखें तो कोई बच्चा अपने आप को इज जस्ट एक्सप्लोरिंग, फर्स्ट वी हिट द हैट, एंड व्हाट डू वी कॉल दैट ऑर्गन? वी से वो चीची है. Like boys and girls generally, shame, shame, those are the words we use. So there is a big taboo for all genders to talk about, think about, or even explore, get connected to their genital organs, and all the more for women. I feel there are big taboos socially, brought in by language, brought in by our cultural beliefs. And this is not only in India, it's across the globe. The way the degrees may vary, but we all have resistances around the genital and the sexual act itself. So I think that translates into disconnection.
Like even when later when we grow up, it's still there subconsciously. So do you think like even like when we grow up as an adult and we get to know more about our body, we are more aware about the fact that yet it's not a taboo, yet we find it very difficult to still connect with our bodies? Does this play a very subconscious role? And if it does, like how as an adult at least, can we what can we do to connect with our bodies more?
You'd be surprised that what we call as vagina, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
we don't even use those words. But even when we say vagina, we are referring to the outer part that is visible, and that is vulva actually. So we don't even know, we are calling vagina is the canal where
Hmm.
baby comes out, or we put the menstrual cup, or we have, the intercourse where. So from Even people who are so-called sexually aware and they are using the words, but they're not using the correct words. So that means, let me ask you another question: that how many women do you think actually know their vulva? Like how many holes are there? How many women can actually feel comfortable? Like I worked in the field of menstrual and sexual health, right? In my organization, Auri Kalankini, we had a very big challenge and making women understand about menstrual cups because that involved inserting the cup inside. क्योंकि इतना
Right.
discomfort है, there is so much discomfort around putting your hands and entering, and of course the virginity thing is a second layer, but
Mm-hmm.
just the general discomfort with our own genitals uh, is still there as an adult. So that is translating into the products that we use and, knowledge we have about our body. So I would say, to answer the first part of your question, yes, there is inherent discomfort even as adults, and it starts from childhood. How much do you have to overcome shame, guilt, feeling bad about oneself to even know your body? Forget sex, forget it. Sex हम बात ही नहीं कर रहे. We're not even talking
Right.
about pleasure, just health wise to know. So lot of work needs to be done, and yes, that is present. And how do we get over it? I think the first step would be to learn about our body. Even if you have a friend, you make a friend. You're going
Mm.
in a bus, you make a friend, you make a connection, right? Hey, what's your name? Where do you stay? What are your hobbies? Getting to know our body, calling it by the right name, seeing what are the, parts of it, understanding it. So I think let's start from there.
You have put it very beautifully. Like it's very interesting, very different perspective of getting to know your own body when you relate it to friend. Okay, so uh, what does normal vaginal health look like when it comes to smell, discharge, color, or texture?
Okay, again, great question. One is, let's say, healthy and unhealthy rather than normal, because then rather becomes abnormal. So let's say what's healthy, what's unhealthy. And I'll tell you the distinction. I mean, why I'm using these words also. Because of the media, how it is shown us, how vagina should be. अगर आप medical textbooks भी लेते हैं, these are perfectly drawn vaginas, and that's how even physicians learn. Or most of us get our information from porn, let's be honest.
Yes.
So there is unrealistic depiction of the genital organs, be it male genital
Mm.
organs or female. And
Mm.
that's why products like vaginal whitening and vaginal tightening creams come.
Mm.
So I want to take out this idea of abnormal, because the normal that is shown to us is not even natural. Forget normal. Vaginas come in vulvas and vaginas and penises come in different shapes, different sizes, different colors, and that is to do with multiple things, from your food to your race. Like you cannot have a pink Indian penis, just like you can't have a pink Indian vulva. And we are doing all this. Both the genders are torturing themselves to have this perfect image. So that is the reason I said let's do away with the word normal. Now coming to your question, healthy vagina. One thing, like these are, I take it like principles, that vaginas are like mouths. They are meant to be wet. The discharges are meant to be there. When do we have to notice? Is when it's itching, when it's burning, when the discharge is off, the odor is off, from your normal odor. And that means that's another reason for us to get to know our vaginas, get to know our bodies. Because unless we know what regularly we smell like, unless we know how wet or, what is our discharge on a regular basis, we won't notice if something is off. That is another very important reason we need to, even if you take health wise, then this is a valid reason for us to get to know our body. So itching, burning, and when the smell is off. Also, let's not try to make our vagina smell like roses and oranges, because products will be sold like that. And we somehow sometimes feel a hesitancy with our own odor, trying to understand that vagina is like mouth. It's supposed to be wet. It has its own inherent smell, which changes with the food we eat, which changes with the hormonal cycle, and which changes with the partners we are with. I'll talk about this later, how the sperm and the vagina have their own microflora, and how they interact with each other. So knowing our normal smell, then we can find out what is off, and also the color of the discharge. Generally, when we are during 14th 15th day of our cycle during ovulation, we all must have experienced we have jelly like discharge. And that is designed so that sperm can enter easily, because that is a time for us when body is designed to allow the fertilization to happen. So that time discharge is meant to be like that. Later
Interesting.
before, yeah, this is a very quick and easy way to find out if you're ovulating, if it's the right time to have sex in case you're planning for pregnancy. Your vaginal discharge will be like egg white. It will be like a jellyfish. Sometimes it comes out as clumps during these times. So vaginal discharges are hormonal. When we have white discharge also, if it is very frequent, if you're just having white discharge all the time, then we need to go to the doctor. If you have gray, green, or pinkish discharges, that means you have some infection. Then it's a great time to go to the doctor. Otherwise, just having a discharge, no problem. And many times in our panty liners, we might see yellow color, cake kind of thing. That is just dried up discharge. So even that is not worrisome. Curdy white discharge with itching, go to the doctor. So I feel basic principles of smell, like if it's really off putting and there are color changes, green, gray, pink, and curdy white, is when we need to go.
Okay, so we like you explain what when do we need to go to the doctor in terms of the discharge color, but what about the smell? And when do you get to know? Like when do you go to the doctor if there's any change in smell, and how do you differentiate between the different smells?
Yeah, yeah. That comes with engaging with your vulva. If many of us, I mean, apart from the internship during medical times where we do in gynac ward, I have spent good 10 years parallel to my practice in menstrual sexual health, and spoken directly to adolescents, to adults, and worked with Anganwadi workers also who engage in this. And I have known firsthand and secondhand that many times women interact with their vagina during menstruation, during penetration, during childbirth. Unfortunately, even touching ourselves down there to clean there is a lot of hesitancy. So I feel to know the difference between our own regular smell. Again, there is no normal smell. Everyone's diet and hormones changes, so it changes. But for me to know what is my own regular smell, I need to engage with my vulva without the shame. And that takes a lot of work. So it can start off with, okay, after every act of urination, I am taking time to wash myself and drying myself clean. After every time of penetration, then I'm taking time to wash myself and dry myself. Even when I'm bathing, like, it's not like jaldi kar diya, it's done. Taking time to treat it with respect. So I feel then you understand what is your regular smell. And also when little bit of, you bring that psychological angle also, that I have to treat it with respect. I have to consciously remove shame around touching my body there. Then what was maybe previously very offensive becomes my smell. It's not offensive smell. Then we can, check that, this is really not mine. This is something different. So,
Interesting. And you touched upon this topic of vaginal products. And in today's world, we have a lot of vaginal products. I didn't know that there are products which make you smell like lemon or rose. But I have heard a lot of products which are like cleaning products. Do we really need all these products which are marketed to us for our vaginal health, or we don't?
okay. One, we have to understand that they will find, like, for example, I'll give this example. Women body hair was not a problem till then Gillette came and made the razors for women. Like before,
Mhm.
it was not even people were not interested to shave themselves. So a product brought a whole, you can say, revolution, or opposite of revolution, where we started problematizing our own body hair. And
Mhm.
it will happen every time that they will bring products saying that there is a need in the market, but actually they'll be creating the need, because if you can play on women's insecurity, that's the biggest market ever. And it's sadly the fact, and it's like a vicious loop. So I feel
Yeah.
in terms of product, yes, the product that will enable us to maintain the vaginal pH. The normal vaginal pH is 3.5 to 4.5, which is acidic in nature, which can be
Okay.
achieved with good hygiene. In just, hygiene, I don't mean that it's dirty and that's why hygiene as in regular washing, washing with soap and water, cleaning, that is good. So if we maintain cleanliness down there with water, then if we are eating well, if we are exercising, if we are keeping our stress in not having high cortisol, automatically the vaginal pH will be 3.5 to 4.5. Many times because of food, because of hormones, sometimes because of taking antibiotics, your vaginal microflora, it may change. It might become alkaline. Also, immediately after sex, because semen is alkaline, your vagina flora will become alkaline. That's why we say, wash off to
Mm.
maintain the pH again. When the when the pH is off, taking supplements that make sure your microbiome, the flora is restored, or taking a pH balanced wash. I'm not taking any names. If you're having repeated sexual, like repeated UTI, if you're having
Mhm.
repeated infections around the vagina vulva, despite
Mhm.
doing all this, then taking a product that normalizes the pH back to the body's natural one, is okay. But
Mm.
skin lightening, skin brightening, vaginal tightening, anything, I would say anything that tells you that your vulva, vagina by its nature is dirty, it's bad, you have to make it
Mm.
better, then I would say don't go for it. They're just playing with your insecurities.
So when you said you can wash it with soap, so any regular soap, if the health is perfectly fine without any UTI, that is enough. We don't need any external products.
That is my understanding, and it can be a radical view because many people prescribe that you need a separate thing for your vulva. Again, I'm reiterating this fact. If everything is going well, the other
Mhm.
parts of your, you know,
Mhm.
body is designed for health.
Right.
you know Body is designed for health, and we have systems in place to keep us healthy. Vaginal microflora is the second largest microbiota collection after gut. We all talk about gut bacteria. Second largest bacterial thing is around the vulva, vagina. So it is very
Interesting.
robust. We need to maintain that, and we need to take everything possible, be it washes, be it supplements, be it food, to maintain that. But just say na, if something is off, you bring it back to normal, and then body
Correct.
takes care.
Correct. Correct. So it's exactly like gut. Like you have to take certain measures to improve your gut. It's the same thing you have to do for your vaginal health. Wow. Okay, so if a woman has normalized their sexual discomfort for years, what does it do in long term, both physically and psychologically?
I'll now zoom out a little and break down the sexual arousal cycle itself. Okay. That's the best part about science, I feel, that it's constantly changing and constantly improving. Earlier, we thought the sexual arousal cycle starts with desire. That, okay, there is libido, there is desire to have sex, then the person gets aroused, then there is plateau, like, there is consistency, there is a plateau, then orgasm happens and resolution happens. Then a lady called Rosemary Basin comes in and she makes it a circular model. So she says it's not like this, it's actually a circle. And before desire, emotional intimacy, safety, and pleasure is required. So, one, if I feel emotionally connected to my partner, if I feel safe in the relationship, and that prospect gives me pleasure, then the desire will come. And for ages, we have been torturing both men and women कि अरे इसका libido low है, इसका libido low है. But we have to check क्या relationship में, whatever name, whatever form the relationship is there safety? Is there emotional connection? Is there anticipation of pleasure? Desire will come. And then we come back. Desire, arousal, plateau, orgasm, resolution, and then again, safety, intimacy. तो क्या होता है? Foreplay, the intercourse, although we make it the star, but I think foreplay and afterplay, if we focus on, this is just a cakewalk, and this can be very a factor to bond people together without stress if we focus on the foreplay and the afterplay. The reason I come here to your question is that vaginal discomfort or discomfort during sex, one, एक तो narrative है कि how they show even in porn, which porn or even Hindi movies, probably they do it closed door, but the sound that is coming, it's very violent. So we think that a woman is a passive recipient and it is supposed to feel like that. It is supposed to hurt.
Mm.
No, our body is designed for health. Our body is designed also for pleasure. So when we are aroused enough, when we are wet enough, it is very pleasurable. It is not hurtful. And then also the sounds or the guttural animalistic sound that naturally comes doesn't come from hurt, or to understand that distinction, it is more instinctual and coming out of pleasure. So the normalization of discomfort is coming from the cultural narratives that has been fed to us and our own beliefs that for women it's supposed to hurt, right? Because that's the receiving end and something is ramming you. I mean, sorry, pardon about the words, but the language, that is what is fed to us. But if we take this cycle,
Mm.
emotional intimacy and pleasure and, safety, I feel, then discomfort might not be that much. We won't normalize it. And also, I want to add one thing here, which is very important to address. 1 in 3 women have been sexually mistreated across the spectrum. So the trauma also plays a part, right? If you
Right.
have memories of that, can, sometimes we say only rape is a big abuse and that is supposed to affect your sexual life. But many things can happen that closes a person off, closes the woman off. And
Mm.
even if the partner is loving later on, the
Mm.
experience, the body remembers the somatic memories like that. So that also can be a reason where vagina is tight. We call the condition vaginismus and
Mm.
penetration is not possible. Forget penetration, that comes later on. Even
Mm.
lubrication. The person is not comfortable enough, safe enough. At that point, I mean, I genuinely think communication is the first sexual act. When you're able to communicate your desires, you're able to communicate your fears and what arouses you, what doesn't. That is the first base. Actually, when we say, first base, second base, third base, even trauma, like years of incest, because anything that lasts long usually happens within a known circle. I've seen people with years of history of incest have very healthy sexual lives because they found a way, they took help to talk to their partners, and it was a joint effort. It's not that someone is broken, but it's a joint effort and it's possible. So I'm sorry I brought multiple angles to the discomfort, but I thought it was important to address.
No, it is actually very interesting because in today's world, everything is so fast and quick. Like the way our attention spans are reducing day by day, even the effort that goes into any kind of relationship is also reducing day by day. So everybody's like, you meet today and tomorrow you probably are going to have sex and everything. And third day you decide, oh, it was not good enough and, things didn't work out and everything. I think it's very different from men versus women also. So yeah, I mean, everything you, at least for, it's very enlightening for me also because I didn't know that so much is actually normal. And I can say it with confidence, like even a lot of like women I have talked to about this. Not everybody knows what you have just described as normal. Usually we do say, oh, maybe you're getting old, so your libido is going slow. But when a girl meets a guy and she's like, yeah, I feel, like I feel this connection and that's why I want to go. And they're like, that feels like you're putting too much effort these days.
Yeah. And everyone,
Yeah, yeah, it's everywhere. And then if it's not there, then it's usually said it's okay. Oh, I mean, it's normal to not feel stuff. You
yeah,
can still go and have sex.
yeah, yeah. Also, like, see, I want to say, I'm not coming from a moralistic perspective that, okay,
Mm.
you should not have, like, there's a term called quickie, and that is different
Mm.
from regular intimacy that one has because that is supposed to be quick. Now we've made
Mm.
everything quickies.
Mm.
We are only having that. So that is one. And also, I don't come from a moralistic perspective. Carry gel, I would say if you feel sex first, sex first. But that is when you're biologically, instinctually aroused by the person, not as a norm. I feel what I'm scared of is the younger people. They've made that the norm. They've
Mm.
made ki if we are together, we have to have sex, and if we have
Mm.
to have sex, you have to be wet. Like there's so many have tos. So we're not doing the aftercare at all. We're not doing the foreplay at all. We're just focusing on that.
How does this thing, like which where everything is becoming so quick, how does that affect a person physically and psychologically? Like not just trauma, but this
Yeah.
is also something, I don't know if this would be called as trauma also later on or not, but not feeling aroused all the time and being judged on that, not giving time for your body to, feel the desire, how does that affect a person in a relationship or outside a relationship?
I mean, you feel less pleasure, you feel less connection, and the slowing down, like you rightly said, even if trauma is not there, the general pace of life is so fast. You have people have little time you to even spend with each other in to have intimacy, to have sex. So then there is this general understanding that, okay, now we are in on the bed, and if I usual clue is okay, one person touches the other, then you turn, and then you're expected to start off.
Mm,
I would say overall pace of life is so fast. The cortisol level in the body is anyway up, which is
mm,
stress hormone. For us to have like a pleasurable and enjoyable sex. Forget
mm,
emotional or not emotional. For us to even enjoy the fact that we're having sex, how you get right the glow that comes after having a good
mm,
sex
mm,
session. For us to have that, multiple like cortisol needs to be low. We need to touch each other enough. The oxytocin needs to come around. Also, in the cycle where we are. Like if we are in the cycle phase in the cycle where estrogen is high, say when we're ovulating, then our body is prepared and we love it.
Okay.
Vis-a-vis when it's when we are tired. So I feel that is the reason I am of the opinion that our hormonal cycle, it's a hack. I feel that not only husbands and boyfriends should know their partner's hormonal cycle, but also men should know the women in their lives, their hormonal
mm,
cycle. Yeah, I don't know how to explain this, but you can really understand the woman you are interacting with when you know why she is the way she is at that point in time. I feel we are more predictable because month after month, we follow the same cycle. It's not as aberrant as it is told to be.
I think no, I believe actually I know these days there are couples who are actually very involved in their um each other cycles only, like men and women both, because especially with the Apple Health period tracker and everything. And it was a very beautiful change to see because I have never heard that before. I was like, wow. So,
Yeah.
okay. I have also heard that a lot of women think that pain during sex is also normal, whether they are, and I think there are two categories. When they're having sex for the first time, it's very normal for them to feel pain. And otherwise, also, they say that sexual encounters are very painful. So, is it in both the cases?
Again, it is multiple factors. One, trauma is there. Second,
mm,
Second, also, the anticipation of the pain, the fear around it makes it difficult to relax. So it can be painful because of that. If you're constantly told that, oh, your first sexual encounter will be very painful, your hymen will break, that will be like very painful. All those things that are there. Most people's hymens are broken just even before the first sexual encounter, when you live a very active lifestyle, and hymen is has nothing to do with, I would say, with the first sexual encounters, not anymore. So please even don't think of it like that, the whole virginity thing. Many times just an active life breaks it up. And so yeah, that is one of the reasons people think that it'll be difficult and it'll be painful. One is the anticipation of pain. Second, the narratives that we have heard. And third, time. Usually, first sexual encounter, both the people are really stressed and they want to get done with as quickly as possible. I would say first get to know your partner before you even uh, get there. And once the bodies are comfortable with each other, uh, then the trust is there more. If you don't have that amount of time, like, okay, 4 months, you're just understanding each other's body. And then, why do we like Razi so much? Why do we like, Vicky Kaushal and Razi so much? Or Hrithik Roshan and Jodha Akbar so much? There's a respect that comes because
mm,
they have waited, they have given the person time to build trust first, and those are period movies or supposed to be. So, what I'm trying to say is that it is a stressful situation for both people because of so much pressure around it to get it right, also for men, also for women. So, I feel when both are communicating, understanding with each other about this and giving each other time, also giving physiologically body to body time, like you have skin time, but you don't have sex. You wait till actually both are ready. Then it's
Mm.
not painful. Then it is actually pleasurable. And if there is pain despite all this, despite the
Mm.
safety, despite the connection, like if a man can't see the fear in the woman's eyes and stop, if a man can't like notice that she's clenching and stop, then what's it about? Like, do you really want to have sex with a person? So I feel building that communication before you get into bed with someone, making it a point that you reach that level of trust and communication before yeah, that is what I feel.
I think so. Like in you said that if a man can't see a woman's discomfort, but I think there are a lot of circumstances where women feel discomfort. The man is not able to see that she's actually in discomfort, and yet the woman is not comfortable to say no or stop. She still goes with it. So it's not considered normal for us to say no, this is not happening. Sorry, stop. I'm not okay.
Yeah, yeah, because when we're talking about premarital sex, which lot of the young people engage in, forget, then there is the fear that if I don't offer this to my partner, boyfriend,
Mm.
then this is not a real relationship. And then it gives all the more valid reason for them to switch partners or whatever. Because this is I went back to college into psychology to do psychology masters at 35, right? So I saw the 20 somethings, how they were interacting. That is a big fear that there is this form of, and I think even in our time, we did have that. But that was more like, duty. But here it is fear based. So, yeah, there is that fear ki if I don't provide this, then the person might go elsewhere. And in marriage, this is in young people, okay, mera actual boyfriend kab hua when we've had that, right? Then now we're really close. And post marriage, it is a demand thing that, oh, you're my wife, you're supposed to say yes, or I am his wife, I'm supposed to say yes. The duty bound thing comes. How many women, I mean, the men will also agree, how many women have told instead of a no, say, Mera sar dard ho raha hai. Yeah, mere periods hai.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very regular, no? This is also shown in media because we are not able to, yeah, more, I
Express
told you, no.
comfort on safety. Like there is no safety to express yourself, and your expressions of discomfort is not welcome.
Yeah.
Along with a lot of preconditioned thinking that this is how it's supposed to be.
We're calling each other couple, but are
Hmm.
we, really able to say what we feel in our mind first?
Mm.
And we're sharing bodies, such intimate parts of our bodies we're sharing, but we're not able to, you know, even say that basic no. And
Mm.
forget, we won't even go to the marital rape thing,
Mm.
where a person can't say no. That is a whole different thing. But yeah, men are always
Mm.
expected to be on, not
Mm.
required. No, the person might be tired.
And they're also told by the other women that you're not supposed to talk like this with your husband or partner. So what will they think about you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a really valid thing. This
Okay. So let's play a true and false game. I'll say a sentence and you just have to say if it's true or false and a little explanation why you feel it's false in case if it's
okay. One
false.
one caveat.
Yeah.
This true and false thing. Maybe most of the time I'll say it depends.
Okay.
Unless they are scientific facts, I can say okay, true and false. But yeah, just a caveat.
No problem. First, if you're not wet, you are not aroused.
False, because many times post in the menopausal age, the person might not be wet. The vaginal dryness may be there, but they may still be aroused. So that is the
Hmm.
reason I say false, not applicable across the spectrum.
Okay. So if they're not wet, but they're not in menopause era and they're like young people, does it still mean that they're not aroused or they don't have desire?
Okay. If it is for me, like
Yeah.
if I have to check if I'm aroused or not, then I will know. It doesn't depend on my vulval or vaginal wetness.
Right.
If I have to see it for my partner, then it's always better to check. Don't assume don't, because many times, and this is known fact, even in forced sex, in rape situation,
Mhm.
the physiology responds,
Mhm.
and in certain cases. So please don't take bodily response to the touch as arousal, because arousal comes from head and the heart. Like, I'm ready. That
Mhm.
need not always coincide with the body fluids.
Next, lube is only for older women.
False, incorrect. Anyone can use it, enhances pleasure. So, lubes actually, apart from the whole penovaginal sexual act itself, it can also be used in masturbation, mutual masturbation, and playing that way. So, I would say be creative and innovative with the use of lube. Don't think of it only as a medicine, that dry hair fix karna hai. Yeah.
The vagina gets loose from having a lot of sex.
That's a false statement. It is like pop culture, people who know nothing, they would ask. But yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is absolutely, this question shouldn't be in people's mind. Vagina is very elastic, and it can go all the way. It doesn't reduce pleasure at all. Now, while we are at pleasure, let's also talk about a little bit. I'm going to, size, the girth does not matter as much as men fear that it does. Like, I've understood very recently. I've understood very deeply in the recent years that how much men torture themselves about size or girth or how long they last. I would say, as a woman and as a practitioner who's been and worked with a lot of women, that one, safety, emotional intimacy matters, and then taking time matters. If you understand and if your focus is on pleasuring your woman, not on, oh my God, is it long enough, big enough, hard enough? If we change the focus there and if we pleasure her where she wants, like the clitoral stimulation, vaginal, and the G spot, nothing to worry. It could be in any shape, size, form, but I think it's intent, time, and effort that is there.
Wow,
So I've just
interesting.
taken 2 minutes to put in that because really men are stressed. It spoils it for everybody.
Women over 30 naturally lose sexual desire.
No, incorrect. I would say this is the textbook thing. I would say it maybe even increases, especially now because women by 30, we are financially independent. We also have lesser insecurities than we had in our 20s about our bodies, about, what is to do in the relationship. And also, maybe by 30, most of them have understood where they want to be touched and what kind of person they want to be with. So I feel if nothing, it increases. And in fact, post menopause, it always increases because the childbearing responsibility is not there. You're not scared all the time, oh, I'll get pregnant, I'll get pregnant. So
Wow.
I've
Okay.
heard like that. Yeah.
Interesting. This I've never heard that post menopause, the sexual desire increases. What I've heard is that post menopause, women do not feel any sexual desire whatsoever.
I would say that women are very anti bullshit in general post menopause because they've seen everything. They've seen all the games
Yes.
and all the social rules. This is my understanding. That's when you've seen aunties, right? They become like they have that fuck you attitude
Yeah.
post menopause. I feel the narrative is that they're not at all interested in sex. I mean, they're not interested in duty bound sex.
Yes.
That's my
Good.
interpretation, reading, and think
Interesting
of it.
spin off words. Yeah. Duty bound sex. Interesting. Okay. So, last. Semen doesn't affect vaginal health.
False. It does. It does. And this, I'll take time to speak a little. Semen, like initially I said, it is alkaline and it affects the vaginal pH. It makes it alkaline. That's why we need to wash. Apart from that, there is also some bacteria that is present in the seminal fluid that interacts with the bacteria in the vaginal ecosystem. Many times it's called shared bacterial ecosystem. When you have a partner who's taking care of their body well, who's eating well, exercising well, who has their stress under control, their semen is rich with lactobacillus, and that's good for the vaginal health. So, it can change your physiology. Choose well. Apart from the red flags, this is an Instagram reel that I saw. It was a clinical nutritionist who said that apart from the whole red flag, avoiding red flag, that's basic. But if you really want to be healthy and live longer, choose a man because in multiple ways it affects. Choose a person who's taking care of themselves and who is a healthy person even
Oh,
that way. Yeah, it changes your microflora. Also, in the seminal fluid, there are these immunal cells, I would say, like prostaglandins, growth factors, cytokines that prepares the vaginal and the woman's immune system. So
Hmm.
even off balance over there can can affect your health and your vaginal health. So I feel it's very shared, literally, ecosystem down there between the genitals, and more you're in tune with your partner, this shows even there, you know.
Wow. Wow. This is for me at least, I'm hearing for the first time that man's eating habits can affect your body as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a true and false. And now, like, I have few questions regarding hormones and desire. A few questions we have already answered. So my first question is like, why is there one week where we are flying high and then another where you just want to be a blanket burrito?
I think that's why many of us as women also are not taught about our hormonal cycle completely. We look at mood fluctuation as an aberration, but it is very linked. The amount of estrogen, the progesterone drop that happens from the 14th day to our PMS time. A man had again this they're amazing men who who are creating content around this. He said a man has to age 127 years for to experience that level of drop what we have in progesterone. If they have to experience that level of drop in testosterone to even compare, 127 years over a weekend. That is
Wow.
the amount of fluctuation that happens for us. So, obviously, our mood, our ability to concentrate, our sexual desire um, would changes across the cycle. In fact, there is a book by Miranda Gray. I mean, yeah, I mean, I holding this. It's called The Red Moon, and this is a great book to understand the sexual cycle itself, and it's more than those 3 to 5 bleeding days. So there is a fluctuation, and more we understand, and it changes with person to person. When you chart your own cycle, I mean, pardon me, using this as an opportunity to educate, but we always see our cycle as a repeating linear event, but it's literally a
Right.
cycle. When
This
every
is
day
a
I'm charting moon dial. So every day you start charting, okay, what's my energy level like, mood like, and then you can see that, okay, this is my pattern. Then it's not such an aberrant thing. Answer your question, it is the hormones that is cycling and natural part.
wow. Next question is, are we over blaming our hormones sometimes?
Yeah, we are not understanding it also. It is like जो समझ नहीं आ रहा, you villainize that. We are the common, I wouldn't say excuse, but sometimes it looks like excuse. Carry women are so complex. Women समझ नहीं आते. Because I feel astronomy समझ आता है, quantum physics समझ आता है, women क्यों समझ नहीं आते? Because effort नहीं डाला ना. You didn't care enough to understand the hormonal cycles of women. Even now, the lot of research that's happening in the menstrual space, women's arousal space, is done by women researchers. Big chunk. So I feel this is laziness when one person says women are very complex and mysterious. Just that put in the effort to understand the cycle. It's not rocket science. In fact, it's beautiful, it's predictable, it's synchronous, and all that shared ecosystem I was talking about, or deep connection that I was talking about, naturally happens when you know your woman. And also vis-a-vis, men have a cycle of 24 hours where their
Hmm.
testosterone goes up and down. When we take time to understand our partners in that way, then we don't blame the hormones. I mean, नहीं हो तो your partner would not be as attractive to you or attracted to you. So, when you're getting the good parts, we all want it, both men and women. But because of our own inability to pay attention and learn, then it's difficult. Then it's inconvenient. Then we are moody, you know.
Then the hormones are playing up. Sorry. Like, so what does chronic stress actually do through the desire? Like, how does it affect our desire?
Chronic cell stress increases cortisol.
Right.
Cortisol is inversely proportional to desire, if we would say. And if you're talking about male arousal, the structure of cortisol is very similar to structure of testosterone. So it goes and attaches to testosterone receptors. So, the availability is goes wonky. And also, by the way, testosterone is present in both men and women in
Mhm.
smaller quantities, and that is the motivation, libido, drive. So, just cortisol increasing on its own can just dampen desire completely, not even going that way. Yeah.
And is there a way to decrease the cortisol levels?
Everything that we've been told from before, have a good lifestyle, eat well, exercise well, sleep 8 hours a day, don't use phone before, like at least 1 hour, 2 hours before sleeping. Put your phone on charge outside. And when we're talking about libido itself, normally ये सब करने से automatically you are more in tune with your body and you're slowed down. But even during the act of initiating intimacy, breathing in, breathing deeper, that puffing, panting phase comes later and comes for a very short time. But if we, all the texts that are actually talking about pleasure and intimacy, you see they focus a lot on breath. And there's something called co regulation. If you and your partner can get yourself to breathe in one sync,
Wow.
you last longer, you have more pleasure, and you feel more deeply connected. And that happens in the initial phase when you're in love, when you're looking into each other's eyes, all that happens, and that can be cultivated even later. Like when, for example, the man is panting and, they're near that, you
Right.
place your palm on their chest and then you
Right.
breathe. It's like two tuning forks. When one is struck and the other one starts vibrating at the same frequency, it's co regulation,
Wow.
resonance. So many times when we learn certain simple things, paying attention to the other person in terms of eye, then placing your palm on the partner's chest. And for men, when they place their palm in the lower back of the partner, you can see how the body feels automatically, how relaxing it is. So this slowing down can be done one overall life में आपको you have to bring changes, but even during the act itself,
Wow.
when the
This was
pressure is released.
absolutely new. It's so fascinating. The whole thing is so fascinating. This thing I've literally never heard. I think now if I imagine, like if I recall few of the shows, they do show this act of desire and putting the hand on the partner and everything. But I never thought it was chilly. If you do it in the real life, this can help so much. It was so fascinating.
And these are the just basic steps. There are like so many more. We could have another whole section on pleasure and, couplehood. Yeah.
Mind blown. Everything is like, so wow, okay. So this was about hormones and desires. And I have one question, especially for the women after the 30s, that after, so a lot of women say that, nothing has changed in our lifestyle. Absolutely nothing, but our bodies have changed. And with that change, the sexual desire has changed a lot. Why does it happen?
See, sexual desire changes even in one whole month. If we are really paying attention, even with our hormonal cycle, it's changing. Every month, it's changing. I look at women's lifespan or even men's lifespan, it's like cycle, 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 cycle into a big cycle. We are constantly, it's like how Earth rotates like around its own axis at the same time rotates around the sun. I feel we are cycling, but we are also cycling in terms of our life trajectory. So we have the first period menarche and then menopause, and then we are continuously cycling. So if we look at it like that, we are experiencing all the four phases. In fact, Miranda Gray in her books, she divides it into four archetypes. In one woman, in one cycle itself, we are, she calls it inner spring, inner summer, inner autumn, inner winter. And in terms of personality, she says every woman is a maiden, flirty, strong, very intellectually sharp, big mouth, jo bolte hain. That is the maiden phase, who we are, very lively and bindas before our men, this thing.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
है ना? Maiden, then the mother phase, where we are very full, we are very confident and nurturing, but also not self depreciating. Then in the premenopause, PMS stage is when we are the seductress. We have that high drive. We can get angry at people because we see through them. And then the crone phase, where we are old and wise and our intuition is pretty strong. So she says, and it correlates with the hormones and the effect it has, that we are four different people and we have four different selves during the cycle itself. So
Wow.
it is not a surprise that when we are reaching perimenopause, also 30 maybe not for everybody, few
Mhm.
people reach later perimenopause, few people early. So that way we are we are more in that seductress phase. That's why I was saying, no aunties have that fuck you attitude. They can just go fight with anybody, or that no bullshit thing kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in the bigger scheme of things, they are in the seductress phase. But we are going through all these 4 phases every month. This is in terms of drive and mood when we are talking about it. Sexual drive and mood and emotionally. Now, physiologically, there are very concrete changes that happen. The bone density drops because estrogen level drops. Also your how wet one is, that also completely changes down there because estrogen level drops. Calcium is less. We start taking supplements That's why also muscle mass drops, collagen drops. So there are very valid physical changes that happen. And because these were not studied, it seems like a surprise to us. But if it was researched as much as any other topic is researched, it would be like, this happens and we have to take these things. So I would say strength training. If you're asking me, how do you make sure you're healthy despite the changes? Start strength training as you hit your 30s. Start in terms of physiology. Also, start taking calcium supplements as we hit our 30s. Also, collagen drops 1% every year post 40s. So, fine. And collagen is not only for skin, but it's also for bone health,
Bone, yeah.
your cartilage. So, I feel we need to think more than just how we look, which is really important, but also, because of how it makes us feel, but also internal bone strength wise. And muscle mass, it's not only for movement, they call it a metabolic organ. It helps with your mobility, yes, but it also helps with your metabolic rate. So also immune function in a way. So we need to take care of the muscle mass. It's not a that drop when it happens, it is very drastic. So strength training, eating a lot of protein, taking collagen and calcium supplements is one part of preparing for the next phase.
Okay. So you said collagen drops after 40, but I think these days they've been telling us to eat collagen
Yeah,
post
even
25
before.
itself.
Yeah,
So is it recommended to eat like from 25, not just for the skin? I believe there's a type 2 for the bones and type 1 and 3 for the skin, right?
correct.
So what kind of collagen should we start at what age? Calcium, you already said we have to do it after 30. So
Immediately. See, I'm not complete a dermatologist, so
right.
they'd be the best people to say the whole collagen. But I would always say, like you said, it is for overall not only skin but bone health also. Lot of marine collagen is available that one can start consuming internally. And also like bone broth, if a person is non-vegetarian, that is very rich in collagen. So one can find food that helps to build collagen, and that is one part of it. Also take collagen supplements itself early on. Also you can take, it's not incorrect, but I'm saying the intent has to be clear. I'm doing it for my health, whereas I'm doing it out of fear that I'm not good enough.
Okay. So, if we feel off in our body, dryness, low libido, pain, or discharge, smell, anything, what's the first steps we should take?
I would say go to a gynecologist, like visit your doctor. Maybe it's a bias that I'm coming because I am a physician. I feel that is the first step. If it is off, like if you're feeling that there is burning, itching, and the change in color, change in the smell. Also, the reason I might be telling that as a first step is because I've seen thousands of women, like this is literal, who don't go to the doctor. Hesitancy, fear, and in rural areas, it's also lack of access and shame. They don't have female doctors. So that is also there. So I would say, instead of hesitating, second guessing, living in fear, getting it checked. Even otherwise, once a year gynecological checkup is a practice we as Indians need to develop. We are so scared of speculum. So getting your HPV pap smear done, even for your cervical health, is really important.
What's the difference between a gynecologist and a health expert?
Gynecologist is a medical doctor who's done MBBS, like overall 5.5 years of overall body. Then they have specialized in, and I'm telling it for people just to, and thinking that people of every range of understanding might watch and hear. After that, they specialize 3 to 5 years in only women's reproductive health. And they, of course, super specializations are already there. Now, sexual health coach may or may not be very well versed in the physiology part. They might understand the anatomy, but They might not have finer understanding like how gynecologist does. Now, also the distinction is sexual health coach might be focusing on the only the sexual act, but I mean that and that in no way depreciating of them. That is also very important. They must be focusing on the sexual act and the health of the sexual organs. Whereas if you see in gynecology or obstetrician, they have the whole spectrum. Like even diseases, they're focusing, infections, they're focusing, the birth itself,
Okay.
they're focusing. So the focus also is changing. And I would like to believe sexual health coach are also are more holistic. I mean, lot of backlash from gynecologists I might get, but they're also holistic in terms of they might have an understanding of the emotional aspect of it. They might ask you the questions around communication, intimacy. The gynecologist might focus on the physiology bit, the hormonal bit.
So
Getting the
if
distinction.
somebody has so if somebody has a low libido, they would go. It would be first like they should first go to the gynecologist and then probably to the sexual health expert.
I would say they would benefit more from first talking to their partner.
Okay,
And
that was next question I was coming up. Yeah,
I am pretty optimistic in that way that
Mhm.
I refuse to believe that it is beyond men's capacity to have conversations like this. I refuse to believe that men are insensitive. I have seen, and by God's grace, I've had really good men in my life. So I don't take that away from them. So I feel that if we get ourselves to speak, of course there are men who are trash also, not negating that fact. But I feel we should not discount that. We can start with our partners.
So a lot of women, they shut down before speaking up. How do you tell your partners that how do you tell your partners that stress is killing your desire or something is happening with your body? How do you have this discussion with your partner?
This is really difficult, and I don't know if like there is this quick four-step solution for this because then it depends on what communication you've had throughout. From before, if you've been, I won't share my emotion with my partner, or if the partner thinks, oh my God, again, she wants to have the conversation, and there is a lot of hesitancy there, then obviously it'll be very difficult to talk about such a deep aspect of yourself. So, in fact, one of my professors said that foreplay is what you do outside the bed. How you treat your partner throughout the day is part of the foreplay. It doesn't start in the bed. So I feel communication is also like that. The sexual communication or the communication about intimacy and what I want, what pleasures me, or how we can make our sex better, our intimacy and relationship better is a smaller subset of my overall openness and communication with my partner. And this is, it's very sad, but it's not taught, and we are brought up like that. There is a lot of distance between genders in a larger scheme of things, but even between couples themselves. We can talk about certain things, but we don't talk about certain things. I mean, is your partner your friend first? So we need to cultivate that.
Yeah, but I think India mein there are so many arranged marriages कि partner as a friend first वाला concept आता नहीं है. Partner as a partner ही रहता है. अगर आपको discomfort है तो आप जाके अपनी mom से या any female person you can go and talk to. Talking to your partner is not something which is normalized or even discussed to an extent कि कुछ हुआ है तो जाके अपने husband से बात करो या अपना partner से बात करो.
उनको सिखाया गया है, अरे तुमको ये समझ नहीं आता, और अगर आप
हम्म.
बोलोगे तो भी मे बी द फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्स इज okay, what should I do? I don't know. That can be the first response. I feel arranged marriage situation, what you told is very valid, but also what is told to people when getting into arranged marriage. ये चीजें तुम इनसे बात करो, ये चीजें इनसे मत बात करो. और ये लेडीज, even if the same arranged marriage structure was there, but before and I'm not telling this or this, I'm just saying, given, let's say that is the norm, there is no love marriage existing in the world at all. But if the preparation of both the people was key, it's a partnership. You are entering that, even the pleasure is a partnership, is a two-way thing. अगर पहले से बोल के ये है, if it's not ram 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 for baby, the quality would differ irrespective of the structure. Yeah.
Okay, so before we close,
Yeah.
let's play another game and it's rapid fire. So I will put out a sentence and you have to answer in one sentence maximum.
Got
right?
it. Hint taken, by the way.
So, one myth every woman must unlearn?
That you're allowed to have sexual desire, like you are a sexual being. I think that is a myth we need to.
One thing women over 30 should understand about her body.
Muscle mass, muscle mass, muscle mass. You need to conserve, you need to build that.
One sentence for everyone who feels too old or too much for pleasure.
Read Miranda Gray's book. Like, honestly,
I have actually written down this book. I'm gonna give it a shot and read it and get to know my body more. With that, we conclude our podcast. Thank you so much for coming to the show, and thank you so much for providing so much of information because I legit my head is like it's blown away. I didn't know. For me, also, there's so much of awareness and so much information I have learned, and I'm pretty sure all the listeners who will listen will get to know more about their body. Hopefully, feel less shame and would be able to express more.
thank you so much, Shelly. It meant a lot, and I had a lot of fun talking to you. Conversations were just so easy. One last sentence is to remember that your body is a wonderland, men and women. So if we can go back with that one takeaway, that would be something.
Interesting. That and the seasons too. I have never heard body as a season. This was like beautiful. Like just be a friend of your own body. It's absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much.
Bye bye. See you. Thank you, everyone.